polycrisis, which is the word of the moment and the word of Davos. It's essentially multiple global crises happening at once.
What is a polycrisis, and how and when could it happen?
We're actually in the midst of one at the moment.
Scott, I'd like to start first with the topic of the polycrisis.
बहुत ही दिलचस्प विषय पे चर्चा करने वाले हैं. हमारी चर्चा का विषय है polycrisis.
Tonight on Wednesday Night Live, we'll discuss Dr. Leana Wen and her so-called bombshell op-ed that she posted in the Washington Post that's been causing furor over the last few weeks. And we'll also discuss polycrisis. Do you know what a polycrisis is? Well, I can tell you this. When the polycrisis happens, we're gonna have to play offense.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to write. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
I would always look at Don Lemon that way whenever I got the opportunity. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. Glad you could join me. I don't have Big Rube with me today, but I do have some pretty cool conversation pieces. So I started off with the polycrisis piece, and I wanted to just kind of get on with that. I did drop a video earlier in the day regarding Dr. Leana Wen. As many of you, the type of people that follow this channel generally will have heard that story already. The video I dropped was just a different take on the story. So like everything I saw with that story was pretty much, people who were either, conservative like myself or in some way leaning that way, kind of celebrating the, we told you so moment. And I did that too, but it wasn't the purpose of the video. The video was really just to point out that it looked like Dr. Leana Wen, who is a CNN loved reporter, they've been quoting her forever. She's still a huge vaccine fan. They have her on their shows all the time. But this time she wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post, and that's what the video I dropped today was about. She wrote two of them, actually, and then has gone viral as the left begins to eat their own, because the op-ed suggested that we may be overstating significantly COVID deaths as well as COVID hospitalizations. And she wasn't saying it was a fact. This is what was kind of crazy, is that she wasn't saying, yes, this definitely is the case. Now, the title, yes, okay, she's writing a title for a blog, an op-ed, but it is an op-ed. It's not an article. It's her opinion. That's the nature of what she was writing. And what she was saying is that in what she's observing, she wasn't trying to claim that there was a scientific study or research that had been done. She's just saying, in my opinion, what I see from the people coming in and the statistics that I'm looking at that are going out, something's not jiving. We should look into this. So she asked a infectious disease expert, and she asked another epidemiologist, what they were seeing. And then one of them, as she quoted him in her op-ed, was that he said up to 90%. He's assuming around 90% of the people that are coming into the hospital being stated that they came in or hospitalized for COVID had COVID, but didn't come in for that reason. And they were parsing those hairs because it matters, right? And that's what they were trying to say, is all we want is transparency in the reporting. And it went nuts. Like MSNBC's putting out pieces attacking them. CNN completely perplexed by the whole thing. CNN was just kind of like, I gave clips to the interview. You can watch the faces of the people on CNN as they, their heads almost explode, that this woman who has been towing the line and been on message for so long had stepped outside that comfort zone and actually asked a question. And the things that concern me, and I'll give you some clips for it in this broadcast, of some of the things about it that concern me, because as she's, you could tell throughout the interview, and we're not going to see the whole interview. You could find it somewhere online. CNN took it down, but you'll find it somewhere. But what you'll see is her reaction and her backtrack. So she starts out by trying to rationally speak to these people and be like, because they're like, well, I've talked to a lot of health professionals and they've said, and then the woman goes on to demonstrate that not only did she not talk to health professionals, but that she freaking didn't even read the op-ed and really shouldn't even have been in the room asking questions at all. And she's like, and they all agree that this doesn't jive with them. And what I'm asking you is, where is your evidence? And that's how you know she didn't read the op-ed, because, and it's just disgusting, the talking heads that they have on TV today. They're all guilty. It's not just CNN. But this woman actually got prepared for work and didn't even bother. She's going to have this woman on her show that didn't even bother to read the op-ed that was the reason that the woman was on the show. And it's just this narrative of over, I mean, what if they do the research? And there is one woman who's doing it, and I list that off in the video. There is one woman who is now starting, and this is one of the people that Lorena Wen cites. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. Like I said, you've probably heard it, but heard the story before. But the different spin on it is the awakening that this woman might be going through. The awakening as she asked a question that she thought was perfectly legitimate, and probably went through her whole life thinking, oh, this is all conspiracy theory, the messaging, and got to be on message, and blah, 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 blah. Like, because she just naturally agreed with stuff. But then she stepped outside that line. And then poof, the attacks started coming in. Now they're there are whole episodes being done by MSNBC and such, just bashing her. And she's probably sitting there going through that moment, right? And we've seen different people go through this moment, most of them celebrities, which is why we get to see it, right? But in the end, I think Nicki Minaj went through a moment like this, where she had a relative in Nigeria who was not, she said not to get the vaccine. I forget what she did, but it was something against narrative, and the attacks came, and she was just kind of stunned that people she thought she liked and knew all of a sudden seemed hostile to her. And it was pretty wild. And when you see this woman, she kind of has that same feel in that interview, because at the end she starts to kind of, I'll even play it. She does this sort of backtrack, right? She does this sort of backtrack where she uses the word probably, and she starts saying, well, maybe in the beginning, in the very beginning, it was probably more people coming in than that came in because of COVID than people who just were coming in that happened to have COVID. But then probably over time, and she keeps using probably because being a medical professional, it's in her nature to not speak definitively on something she has no data on. And that's what got me, was that she has that, like, we have no data on what this woman was asking for. No data. Like, no one has ever, like, it was just validation that no one has ever stopped and started to separate the people that came in, and they talked about, you want to laugh, they talked about gunshot wounds, because we heard a lot of that years ago, and she had the infectious disease expert that she had mentioned. He had mentioned that, yeah, as an example, if someone comes in with a heart attack or from gunshot wounds and they happen to die, they happen to pass on from their wounds, just because they had COVID may get added to their death certificate, when in reality he felt that it should not, and it was not the cause of death. So I made a joke about it, and I led off the video that I dropped today on it, and I want to play it for you because it's funny. And if you like Goodfellas, if you like the movie Goodfellas, then you should really enjoy this one. Let me just make sure I have it right as to which cue it is, and I believe it's this here.
And then the third is COVID as an incidental finding. So somebody coming in with a gunshot wound or a heart attack and they happen to test positive.
You know who would really benefit from being able to label gunshot wounds as COVID?
Oh, no.
Yeah, who's this?
It's Vinny.
Vinny, what happened? Everything get straightened out?
Yeah, we had a problem. And we tried to do everything we could do. You know what I mean? He's gone. He got COVID-19. and there was nothing anybody could do about it.
So, if you're a Goodfellas fan, you found that funny. If not, if you don't know the movie, I don't know how you can't know the movie if you're in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., perhaps, but if you're a fan of mafia flicks, then that one definitely should have resonated with you. But like I said, I wanted to just go over it because I was so shocked at her response. And here's her response. So I'm gonna, now that I've done having my fun, I want you to hear all the two probablys that she throws in. Like, you tell me, does she sound like a woman who is speaking with confidence and data, or does she sound like someone who's kind of reeling and trying to throw some live bait to the attackers, to give them some red meat to them, because she's concerned about their reaction to what she said? And let me just make sure I got the right clip here. Here we go.
I think that we need to separate out and look at the percentages of each. That percentage would have shifted over time as well. In the beginning, probably a lot more people were dying with the primary cause of COVID. That probably has shifted. And I think, again, we need to understand this. Another reason to understand this, too, is a lot of people are wondering when they should get a booster next. When do we need a second booster or
another booster and another booster? And thank you, sir. May I have another? and you just hear the tone of how she's speaking. Like, and what she's doing there is, after they keep coming back at her, like, what you're saying can't be true. What you're saying can't be true. Audience, what she's saying can't be true. What she's saying can't be true. And they just keep hitting her with that kind of stuff. And she starts to realize that what she thought earlier, that she had a good point and that she could articulate it and explain it to these three doo-doo-doos, and that they would get it. But like, they kept coming because they're programmed. But so then she realized, all right, I have to feed them something for their programming. It's like, clearly there is something going on here. And she's probably not, we all know what it is, but she's probably having trouble articulating it. And that's the issue. The issue is that she's kind of dumbfounded, is the way it seems to me. Go watch the interview for yourself. Let me know what you think. But like, she seems dumbfounded at the fact that she's even being attacked for this. And so, because she didn't expect it, because she was in the zone, she was in that mass formation, and now she stepped outside by accident, and there's no uncertain terms that she's being told, through social signaling, that you are bad, what you said was bad, we'll try and bring you back to the light, but not on this one. We're going to attack you. And they just continued. If you look up this woman's name and COVID-19, you're going to see there'll be some interviews, but they're scrubbing a lot of the stuff now, of the one where she was, the one where she initially made those comments in the CNN interview. The rest of them are all without her, the ones they leave up, and they just bash her. And she's probably out there going through that moment that every devout Marxist goes through, when, especially in the intelligentsia portion, where they think that, well, I'm just in line with all these people. I don't know what they mean. And she's now learning who owns the science, right? She's now learning who owns the science. And that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal. And it's interesting and weird to see play out on a live set like that. But there it was. And I think a lot of us know, and have seen different people go through this, where they really didn't see it coming. And we're all looking at it like, dude, what did you think was going to happen when you stepped outside the line like that? And yet, they still sit there shocked. So, like, there's only so much we can really help these people, right? There's only so much we can really help them. Like when someone like that doesn't know and they step outside the line, it is what it is. But now the other piece, now that I've talked, feel free to comment on that, on the platform. So I'm not seeing a very active crowd there. I see a lot of people, but not a lot of active activity. So if you got something to say about it, pop it out there. I'll put it on the screen. All right, because I don't have Rube today, so it's really just me and you guys. So the other part was the polycrisis. So this is not a new term. It's not like WF invented this. But after watching and absorbing the week of Davos, and there's still plenty more to watch, polycrisis is a word that you will keep hearing. And it's become evident that this is going to be like the next buzzword. And what's crazy about it is that, and what it means is, is when multiple crises are happening at the same time, right? It's kind of self-explanatory in that sense. It's when, like we have this economic crisis, the food crisis, the energy crisis. So all of these crises happening, and WEF is now talking about it. Like, so you're going to hear this because this is how they're moving your psyche, right? So you're going to start hearing, well, in the midst of these polycrises that were underway, we must take action now. We must do something immediately. And little by little, in every country, they're gonna start justifying all the crap they've been doing for the last 3 years. All right, and that includes, the stuff in the Netherlands and Canada with the fertilizer. It includes the narrative on the Ukraine war, which really, the more and more this thing builds out, all the crises that they wanted to have, and they announced, they were planning for the food crisis before January 2020. Like, while nobody thought, including experts, thought there was going to be a food crisis, WEF is like, they're completely done with their game plan for food innovation hubs and how they're going to handle things when the supply chain breaks down. Like, no one was even thinking supply chain, but these guys are like prophets. You know why? Because they're causing it. That's why. So, as they continue to cause these crises, they're going to keep pumping out this narrative. And they create another crisis. Now they've named it. Now it's polycrisis. Now you're going to start hearing polycrisis. Before it was just, COVID, the things from COVID, the reaction to COVID, the damage that COVID has done. Not the damage that the people who came down with the COVID policies had done, but COVID itself. What we learned from the pandemic, is that our leaders are incompetent. That's what we learned. So Larry Howard on Facebook. So I came across this article, but can't get it to load. However, it concerns the next practice episode, SPARS 2025-2028 from the Johns Hopkins Institution. If I can't get it to load, I'll attach it. Yeah. By all means, share it with everybody for sure. And by the way, to those of you who message out to the channel with different links and different topics and things like that, I keep going. I appreciate it. I've got a full-time career that I manage aside from doing. I would love to do this full time, but we're not there yet, right? 16,000 sounds like a lot of followers, but like in the world of trying to do this, professionally and be full time, that's going to require more financial support than what I can do just on Facebook. And so we're working on it, though. So let me know your thoughts. I was thinking about doing a Patreon channel where I could really just let loose and not have to keep the handcuffs on in certain areas. But Danny Mayer Jr. says we can make it a tri-crisis if they keep pushing. Yeah, and that's the polycrisis thing, right? Tri-crisis is too simple. They got to sound intelligentsia. They're gonna go with polycrisis. But if you create, why on earth would we be looking? Like, why on earth would anybody take these people seriously? Why on earth would anybody look at the people who are creating the problems and then even give them a second to explain how they're the ones that should fix them? It's so rigged, it's ridiculous. It's so rigged. Like, they could end the energy crisis tomorrow. They could end it. It's all caused by them, because they want you to believe that we're all going to die in 12 years while banks are still giving 30-year mortgages to coastline property. But they want you to think it's all over in 12 years if you don't give up your rights and listen to what they're saying and follow their lead. Give them up. Give up your rights, and we'll all save the world together, because the world can't be saved while you still have liberty. That's the message that they're delivering. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And the fact of the matter is, too many people are listening. Even though more people are waking up now than ever, too many people are listening to that garbage. And they're taking these people seriously. And how many of you had a conversation with someone and they start using buzzwords? And you just know at that moment, whatever the conversation may be. Like, if you're talking about the elections, they talk about the big lie, right? They'll say the big lie. Immediately, you're talking to a program person, right? If you're talking about, if you're trying to have an honest discussion about vaccines and they start labeling people anti-vaxxer, you know you're talking to a program. They don't know that they're programmed, but you know, right? Because you hear the buzzwords, right? Like you know what they are. And Polycrisis is going to be one of those buzzwords. So it's another one that's going to help you identify the programmed from the separate the program from the non-program. And that's always, that is always beneficial. And that's why I wanted to cover the word tonight, because a lot of people may not, look, I watch all these WEF garbage channels and watch these sociopaths talk about their visions of grandeur so that you don't have to, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? I watch, to some level, CNN, read the Washington Post, those types of things, even though I know they're garbage, but I read them so that you don't have to, right? Like that's the way that I rationalize it. Because I have no interest in these publications. Like when just like I validated the Epoch Times over years of being able to go back, look into, source, and validate their news, and then see them be 3-4 months ahead of everybody else in just about everything, in particular news on the CCP. That's how they got validated with me, right? When you do that with an organization and they never pass the muster, or very rarely do, well, you don't want to read it, right? But in the end, it's still relevant because there's people reading it, right? So, and here's Danny Mayer on Facebook. I just politely move on. They hurt my brain. Yeah, they do, but it's, again, knowing the words though is how you know to move on, right? Because like Yuri Bezmenov told us, like there's no outside conversation that's going to teach these people the reality that they're in. It's got to be a moment like that doctor had on CNN just now. That's why I found it intriguing, because she actually put up an op-ed. So she put the first op-ed out a couple of weeks ago. Then we had a week of everybody going nuts with it and whatever. And all the conservative channels basically using it for clickbait and being like, can you believe this? And everybody buying in, right? They got me a couple clicks out of that too. So then that passed. Then she put out another op-ed that was speaking on trying to clarify the first one. It still kind of said the same thing. And that's why like she's just going out there thinking maybe I worded it wrong. and like people like us are looking at her like, you didn't word it wrong, sweetheart. It's the wrong message. You're asking questions that they don't want asked in the public forum. Like there's someone who owns the science out there, and it's not you. And I don't think until she went through this, I don't think she understood that there's someone who owns the science out there.
We're becoming much more proactive. We own the science, and we think that the world, should know it.
Right? The world should know it. They own the science. So just sit back and don't hurt yourself. Go do your doctor things, but don't come out and speak. Know what the messaging is, and do not come out and speak against it. And that's basically what she's learning now. You could almost see the eyes opening as she speaks. Right. As she went back and said those probablys, like, probably in the beginning, more people did have, and probably, and then, and I like the boosters. People want to know, should they get a booster or another? It was just like, how many things can I tell these people to make them like me again? Because I clearly feel myself slipping out of my circles. And now's the question, is she going to embrace that, or is she going to fight it? Is she going to embrace that, or is she going to jump back in line and apologize? I hope to God she embraces it, because everyone, it's a beautiful thing. I don't hate on people who once believed in all this garbage and then wake up. I love those people, because it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. It requires humility. You need to, and I too went through a process similar to this. I don't run around claiming that, I've always said this, and and all that. I don't do that. It's been a little, really a lot of the stuff that I've opened my mind to happened after the pandemic. Really, that was true. A lot of the things that I started to listen to more seriously started to get I started to ask more questions after the pandemic, because it became abundantly clear that things were wrong. It wasn't like someone had evidence that seemed to add up and this and that. It was like things just seemed like there was blatant lying going on in a variety of areas, and it was important to bring that to light. It was important to ask the questions, and the more you asked the questions and the more you looked into things, the more your eyes opened, and the more humility I felt, because I started to realize, how ignorant I was, how much of the soup I was eating, right? Because it wasn't just, oh, these Marxists are brainwashed. They are, but so are conservatives in a lot of ways, especially the older ones, because we know what the world, we think our day was better, but in the end, we don't acknowledge that this was going on in our day too. As a matter of fact, we're the reason why it's allowed to advance to the point that it is now, and we don't want to own that. We don't want to own that. Right? We don't want to look back and we want to be like, oh, this devil music, they're putting the Satan images and all this stuff. And then, we forget that, like Motley Crue, Black Sabbath, right? Like forget the lyrics of hip hop, right? At least after, it became a big production, right? Once the music industry got hold of hip hop, that you didn't have to say anything there. But all the devil stuff that was embedded in all the music in the past, the culture change that had taken place because of what these people have been doing for so long is everyone alive today's responsibility. There's a handful of World War II vets who may not be responsible. Like, and when I say World War II vets, I mean people of that era, of the greatest generation era, the silent generation, if you will. But everybody from boomers up, we're all guilty. This began in the mid 50s. This didn't start in 2000s. This didn't start with millennials. It's been going on forever. They stopped teaching legitimate civics in class decades ago. So we all own this. And now that we're at this level where, as Yuri would say, we passed the demoralization stage, we're in that crisis stage. Right? We passed we haven't got up. I think crisis was second, destabilization. We're moving into those phases now. The brainwashing is already done, in their opinion. It's already done. We got people. They've got people as easy to in their boxes so neatly, and they can shake any one of those boxes at will to ramp everybody up, and they don't even And we're going through life like, oh. I just want to be able to go grocery shopping. Whatever. You want me to wear a mask? Okay. I just want to go grocery shop. I just want to be able to live my life. You're asking permission to live your life. That's not how this works. We don't ask permission to live our lives. So these little tasks that they put out there are all games. This is all like a dry run. All right. It's all a dry run. They're just trying to see, all right. So if we try to make them do this ridiculous thing, I'm waiting for them to come out and because it is a mass formation at this point. And once it is a mass formation, the more ridiculous, the better is what the psychology on that is. So I'm waiting for them to turn around. And this is why they come out with rules like when you go into a restaurant, well, sit down, you can take your mask off. When you stand up, you got to put it back on. We all know that doesn't make any sense. You don't have to be an epidemiologist to know that doesn't make any sense, but you do it. Right? We do it. Now, it's one thing if you do it. It's another thing if you do it without complaining. You should be bringing it up every single time. And even if it gets to a point where a restaurant doesn't change its way, or if the state is, which is usually the case, the state is pounding on the restaurant, then we need to start dealing with that on a political level. But it should enrage everyone. It should be of the case when they start to make that the poll numbers fall off such a cliff that there's no amount of fixing in the world that could throw an election. Right? It should be one unified voice being like, screw you. This doesn't make sense. My eyes are open. I can see. Right? I can see. This is why unity matters. Let's see what we got here in comments. So, this is Larry Howard. When they condemned that 60-year-old medicine, hydroxychloroquine. That's actually the moment. That one was the moment where I really realized that Fauci was full of crap. They put out a study. I want to say it was the Lancet. It could have been the New England Journal of Medicine. It was a well-respected publication, though. And there was a study that went in that was saying that particular drug, I'll keep away from the name, it's not trigger these people in their censorship buildings, but they went ahead and put out this study saying it causes heart problems, it causes, and immediately doctors around the world were just like, what? Like it's not like it's not like it was the vaccine where nobody knows anything and they're learning. This was a drug that had been around for 60 years. It was listed as one of the safest drugs on earth. It was in Nigeria. It's over the counter. They take it all the time because of malaria. And it's just that somebody recognized that the two viruses work in a similar manner and tried it as a prophylaxis, meaning before it got advanced. Okay, and like if you did it early when you first got it, that it would stop it from spreading. It wasn't going to cure it once you got, full, if you were crystallized lungs and stuff. But Fauci came out during that too. He knew it was BS. He had published information on his own. I had covered all this on earlier episodes of the channel. He had covered on his own and published papers that were stating with previous versions of SARS that there was success in as a prophylaxis. But then they all did an about face because that drug is $6. And that's, there's no other way to think about it. When you think about why that would be, why, and so I started watching Fauci closer at that point because I'll admit, when this thing first happened, I wasn't all that skeptical. Matter of fact, I remembered Fauci from the 80s and was like, oh, we still got this guy? While we were all still scared of it, going, what the hell is this going on? And I was looking at Fauci like, oh, we're in good hands here. Good. That's the guy we need. And then slowly as time went on, it was like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And little by little. And then that came along, right? Them condemning this medicine. And I was like, at first I was like, they're just condemning it because Trump said it. Okay, I get it. But then I was like, I don't even think that's it. I'm like, because he only said it once and he said it in passing, like someone had mentioned it. It wasn't even, but it triggered a response that was outrageous. And then I saw the fake study came out. It got pulled down 2 weeks later because the dosages that they were using, you could write a study that says Tylenol will cause all kinds of problems if you're taking 3 bottles a day. That's kind of what the study did. So when doctors looked at it, then they realized it, exposed it, and they pulled the study. But it was sitting there for 2 weeks in a reputable journal. If you remember Neil Cavuto on Fox News, it will kill you. It will kill you. I was just like, these people have lost their minds. These people have lost their minds. And that really did begin my journey of realizing that, okay, you know what? This is worse than I thought it was. There's certainly a lot more out here and a lot more questions to ask and a lot more things. What else did I blow off in the past that I should probably listen to? And truth be told, there was a lot of stuff that did turn out to be bogus when I looked into it. But there was a lot of stuff that didn't. There was a lot of stuff where either the question is still open or but it got me to look down the path of previous presidents, Kennedy, Truman, Eisenhower, that whole relationship with the deep state. And it got me going down a lot of different places and learning a lot of factual history that I didn't know before and frankly disturbed me. And part of that is why, when in the beginning it was me and Jack doing the channel, part of that is why we did the channel, because we always had these conversations about it. And, Jack would always take a position and then I would throw in some curveball position like I do now, where I hit the same topic, but I come at it from kind of a different angle. And we were like, dude, this might work for a channel. And so we started the Patriot Think Tank, which I'm glad we did. But, all right, let me take a look at what we got here in the way of comments. I don't have Big Rube today, so I'm kind of flying on my own. Do I see anything? I don't see anything in the Rumble chat. Something's weird about Rumble. If you're watching on Rumble right now, they don't really tell me, they don't tell me how many people are watching the way the other ones do, but everything else comes into my feed, so I see a total number from Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. Like I see a combined number on my screen, but Rumble doesn't integrate. And what's crazy about Rumble is like, normally we'll have like 15, 20 people across platforms. You know, sometimes it's really crazy, get like 30, but like usually it's like somewhere between 10 and 20. And because they don't distribute my content, right? So 15, 16,000 followers and like 2 people get an alert. My own brother doesn't get an alert. So, but on Rumble, like 20 minutes after I broadcast, I go there and I look, and on some of these, I'll see like 60 views. And I'm like, there's no way they like Rumble didn't even finish uploading the video yet. And I'm like, how could there be 60 views already? So it's kind of crazy. I feel like we're getting a better response on Rumble, and I'm not appreciating it because I have no way of telling that it's happening. So if you're on Rumble, if you're watching this on Rumble, do me a favor and leave some comments, because that's another thing is I see comments. It's in the top right of the video, not in the regular comment section, in the top right. So if you look at the video, look to the right and leave the comments there. And folks, if you haven't subscribed to us on Rumble yet, please do, because I'm getting to a point where I have less and less F's to give as the days go on. And it's very possible that I may just start producing content for Rumble exclusively. And because I've been, you know, I don't know what, I mean, I'm monetized on Facebook. It's the only one that I'm monetized on, but they won't distribute my content, so they don't make anything. So my attitude is like to follow the likes of Kim Iverson and Dan Bongino and the big ones who have big followings, who are all moving to Rumble. You know, I'm starting to think to myself, you know, that's where my energy might be best placed. Although generally speaking, up until now, Facebook has been pretty good to me, but you know, recently it's been kind of weird. And you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's them, if it's me. Maybe my content just sucks. I don't know. But in the end, it like the content will do well on other platforms, but not here. Do well here, not on another platform. I don't understand it all. But the distribution, I can definitely tell when it's being slowed. And you know, Rumble, because I've never focused on it and I've only started focusing on it in the last few weeks, all of my content is there. I've always posted it there, but I've never actually dialed into it. But I do think it's the future. I'm watching all of these larger YouTubers, you know, who have serious content, right? Not baking channels and stuff, but like serious content. I see them all migrating to Rumble one by one. They're starting to Rumble or Patreon, right? And so I'm looking at maybe doing both of those, and still posting to Facebook and YouTube, but like, you know, clips of the videos that I put on those, and do the longer, more in-depth ones where I get to say, you know, whatever I want. I mean, I still get my point across without getting kicked off so far, right? So far I've been able to do that, but like not who knows how long that'll last. At least I've been able to do it on Facebook and Rumble. On YouTube, they gave me, I've gotten 6 strikes in the year and a half of this, or almost 2 years of this channel's existence. I've gotten 6 strikes. So I feel like if you have a YouTube channel and you haven't gotten a strike, then you're doing it wrong. Because they just make stuff up, you know. They just make stuff up. And Danny Mayer says all platforms is always good. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I wanted to diversify, because even though most of my content is, you know, I mean, when I get into the WEF stuff that I get worried about. I mean, Article 5 is what it is, right? I mean, for them to, although they have gone after Convention of States Actions channels a couple times too, but not the way they come after me. Like they, I don't know. One video I got a strike for was up there for 17 weeks before they decided to give me a strike on it. Like I almost feel like there's just someone sitting there going, you know what, these guys are annoying me. Go through all their content, find something. Here's one from 17 weeks ago. Strike them. So, but Rumble, I've never had any drama. At Facebook, it's just confusing. Like they've never banned me. All the videos that I got strikes for on YouTube, never got a strike on Facebook. But what I notice on Facebook is certain types of content, suddenly you start getting these notifications. your distribution is 10 times less than normal at this after an hour, or 20 times less than normal. And then like every video you put out, no matter what, starts falling in that category. And it lasts for like a week, 2 weeks. And then it used to be 2 days. Now it's getting longer. And then all of a sudden it frees up and everything starts getting views again. So I don't know, what the deal is with that, but it does drive me literally insane. So let me see if we have what we have here. Um, yeah, so here's Philip McGurk, right? The alert didn't open up. Like I get people messaging me with all kinds of stuff. Like I tried to follow your page and it kept demanding I sign in, but I was already signed in and it wouldn't let me follow the page. And like all that kind of weird stuff is what I'm getting from everybody on Facebook. Like hey, I wanted to watch, but I didn't. My brother told me last week he got an alert for a live event on Thursday. and he's my brother, so he went in and looked for it. Like he went in, it doesn't show on my page that I'm live. So he went in and he went to the events section, and then in the events section, he usually finds it. Last week he couldn't even find it in there. It's my own brother. So this dude's watching every week almost. And like if any algorithm's going to pick up whether he should see this content, it should be him, right? But even he doesn't get it. So it's stuff like that makes you be like, dude, like I got 16,000 people who have chosen to click follow on this page, and none of them even know that I'm brought. Like they have to remember me now. They have to like think like, oh yeah, that New York guy that was talking about the Patriot thing. What is it like? Really? And then they gotta go try and find me. Like why is that? If you follow a channel, at least let them know for a live event that you're up, and let them give their feedback and things like that. So I don't know, but it is what it is. So let me see what we got here as far as comments. So we got some vaccine comments here. Hold on. So I got to go back further than where we're at here. So all right, so here's a long one. I don't know if I can get through all this. So Larry on Facebook, the malaria drug that my aunt takes when she volunteers for the church programs in the tropical countries, they give her medicine before she leaves to protect her. So now it's bad and will cause heart attacks. Yeah, exactly. And that I'm assuming you're talking about hydroxychloroquine, and then all of a sudden they turn around and say it's bad, and it's like, well, what the hell? We've been taking this forever. CDC had a thing on their site, like it was like a tutorial for people that were going to Nigeria or one of the malaria countries, and it basically gave you instructions, like frequently asked questions. One of them was, who's it safe for? And they literally said it was safe for babies, pregnant mothers, like it was safe for everybody, except I think it was sclerosis or something, or something along those lines. It was some offshoot affliction that it wasn't jiving with, but like pretty much everyone on earth without rejection of a small percentage. And then Larry says they're definitely going for it. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. The other thing, where's the damn animal? Where's the raccoon or whatever the heck they eat? But nevertheless, no animal still. I'm assuming, Larry, that you're talking about like the bat or whatever, the origin device. I think it's become pretty accepted now that this was most likely a lab leak. I think even the left has accepted that now. One of the reasons that I talk about the Epic Times so much is because this was probably the kicker for me. So I've been reading and watching Epic Times for a while, and in April of 2020, so right after this was a thing, right after this had happened, and we were all still kind of reeling from 2 weeks to flatten the curve and this and that, they came out with a full-blown documentary about the origins of COVID, and were spot on. Apparently they got banned from YouTube at the time, but they were allowed back on. I don't know if they're still on there now, but I do know they have it on Epic TV under Joshua Phillip, who did the documentary, and they were spot on. I mean, they got into detail of and that's why, because Joshua Phillip has been following the CCP for a decade. like in detail. So his sources are on the ground. No one's got better sources in China than Epoch Times. They started there and fled to the United States because of freedom of speech. And so they nailed it though. And everyone called him crazy, conspiracy. But I was all in because I'm like, these guys have never been wrong yet. And so if he's saying this, I'm taking it serious. And sure enough, 6 months later, or whatever it was, they started acknowledging that that could be a thing. And eventually Biden was like, yeah, I want an investigation on this. Why don't you call Joshua Phillip? He'll help you. He was on this freaking 3 years ago, right? So that's kind of my thing for Epoch Times. Like I definitely, they charge like $1 a month or whatever. If you go on there, it's $1 a month to start, and then I think it's like $4 or something like that a month. I forget, but in the end, it's worth it. If you just look at their Epic TV section and just go through the documentaries, I mean, the China 100-Year War is epic. I mean, it's a phenomenal, detailed breakdown of the CCP that was born in 49, that then declared a 100-year war against the United States and are absolutely still waging it. And they get into how and why and the history of it and how each president was duped by them, etc. It's amazing. They've got so many. Farmageddon is another one about the food crisis. So many quality, informative documentaries on there that because of their history are well researched and solid. So it's something that I highly recommend to anybody. Let me see. Danny Mayer says they started on us all back in 2015. I might be going back too far at that, and I forgot what that's in reference to. So I will let that go. But yeah, as far as information, folks, but definitely check out the video that I dropped today. It starts off with that Goodfellas scene, which it immediately came to my head when they were talking about gunshots. I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine the scene with and so I did a little tweaking on the phone conversation to make it work. But definitely check that out, guys. When you watch videos, when you do, if they do put a video in front of you, try to keep it on for a minute. Like even if it's a topic you might have heard before or whatever it may be, try to keep the video on for a minute, because that's how they judge distribution. So and I don't want to be, it's all about Facebook stopping me or I'm oppressed. Like there's an element of it where I got to have the viewership too, right? So but it happens early on, because like what happens is sometimes a video early on, it doesn't get the 1 minute views, but then like as it sinks in and over time, it starts to build up stats that are good. But then they still are like thwarting its distribution, because the first few people that saw it for whatever reason didn't keep it on for a minute, and so they ended up not letting anyone else see it. Whereas that happened with one of my China videos, where I don't know if it was intentional. Usually the China ones are intentional, but it happens with a few of the videos where if they don't get off to an immediate start, they just slow it down to the point where it could take the video 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to start to circulate. And if it's a time sensitive video, it's far too late by then. So, then people finally see it and they're like, well, what the hell? It's a little late, even though they see the date, but it is what it is. So let me, what do we got here? They also replaced the air handler's job at the lab. The same. Yeah. The Wuhan lab is bada boom, bada bing. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, if you go, I think it's called the original origins of COVID. You may still find it on YouTube. But like I said, if you're not subscribed to Epoch Times, I don't get paid by them. They're not. I'm just telling you because it's legit. To definitely check out that news source, because it's so hard to find a decent news source that's reliable. And to this day, I still validate stuff that I hear from there too. Like that's just in my mind now for everything. Like no matter what I read, or I'm always clicking on the source links, and I would tell you to do the same thing. I'm just telling you that I've been like, now you have the advantage of having someone who's already goes through that and has gone through it for years with them. And I have yet to find something that they were wrong on. or that they didn't source properly, or that, that they stated as a fact that wasn't a fact, right? So someone's opinion that I differ with is different, but anything they state as fact, you could take to the bank. I've yet to be able, unlike a lot of these like WAPO and stuff like that, the Washington Post or New York Times. You read those, it's just brutal. They they'll like give you a link that's has the name of the document you're looking for in the sentence, and then you click on it, and it's an article that they wrote about that document. And you're like, what the hell's that? You end up going on this source circular reference, and you end up back at the original article, realizing that this whole game was a waste of time, and they're just not expecting anybody to click that link. Like that's why I don't respect sources like that. Not to mention they're clearly biased in what they say. So Chinese military have changed their tactics to bio warfare. This was 2016. So that's exactly why we have the labs in Ukrainian cities now. Oh, I mean the old European Union labs. Okay, guys, good chat. All right, take care, Larry. Yeah, the labs in Ukraine, I don't know what the full story is there. I do know that there are government officials who straight out admitted that they were concerned that those labs may get hit in this war because of what might be released. And I'm just saying to myself, that was Rubio who was doing that interview congressionally. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And how are we just still allowing this military industrial complex to exist? Like I don't even understand how that's a thing. Philip McGurk, Moderna has a parasite in the mRNA Mpox shot. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff claiming that vaccines have these hydra and these parasites and whatever in them, but like, I got to be honest, when something like that is legit, and I think what was it, Stewart, or now I'm forgetting his name now because I haven't watched him in so long. I used to watch him on Rumble, and he would always have these doctors come on who were making these claims that you're like, what? And then like when you try to go down the rabbit holes and find out the truth, the circles that I go in for information would not allow something like that to slip by unnoticed. Like it wouldn't be, Stu Peterson, is that it? I think it might be Stu. I forget. But in the end, like when you, there's no way in the information circles that I've learned, to go to as go-to points to validate something. There's no way a story like that's going to break where there's an actual, where there's an actual parasite or whatever inside, injected into with the virus, and that nobody's going to find out. Like at this point, the virus, the vaccine's out there, they'll find it. Like they'll find that. Like someone will get a dose and they'll find. I just find it hard to believe at this point that it's at that level. I think a lot of it's like all vaccines, man. It's a big pharma play, and as far as the vaccine, they're trying to make money. I mean, that's there might be a compliance piece in here too, just to see how many people take an experimental drug that they know nothing about, because that's going to be a testament to how deep in the mass formation they are and how much they fear COVID. And so, it kind of gives them a feel for what the playing field is like. You know what I mean? Like that's my thing with them. Is like, it's kind of, at least that's how I see it now, right? I mean, I guess they're not, until they start inviting me into Davos and into the Bilderberg meetings and stuff. I think a lot of this stuff, we have to put these pieces together ourselves, and it's tricky when you do that. You want to be careful not to go off the rails, right? You want to do it with, like, I made a pretty bold statement, which I don't often do, but I'm right now. And I am free to change my mind. I don't buy all that flip-flop stuff. If there's new facts that come out, I'll listen. But right now, the video I put out on China and the fact that they're buying as much gold as they are, that should scare everybody. That should scare everybody, because I've been always trying to figure out, how does this play out? Like, you've got the WEF, right? I mean, you look at the last 60 years, you've got you've got China's 100-Year War, you've got the Soviets and their ideological subversion, you've got the WEF, which jumped on board around 1970 or so. You've got all of these organizations, all separate technically, but all bent on the same goal, and that's to take down the United States and replace it with something communist or Marxist. And they all are chipping in on the same factor, different ones, all contributing. But now that we're at this advanced stage, like, it's become the part where that's already been a success. And now you're looking at it, and like the thing that perplexes me is like, how does China and even the BRICS countries in general relate to the WEF? Like, how does that play out? Because there's no way China is going to allow anyone to be one world, anything. Like, that just doesn't work that way. You don't have to be a historian to understand that the CCP is not ceding control to anyone, nor are the BRICS countries in general. Right. And so when you look at that dynamic, it's like, how does it play out? And so part of what began to make sense to me was when China, if you're not aware, they made a run on gold in the third quarter last year and announced it in the fourth quarter, and they never announce it. So when they announce it, it always has meaning. There's always a reason for them to announce it. And they've been making that run on gold, and then they come out and claim that what they have in their reserves is 1,980 tons of gold bullion, which is ridiculous. There's no way that's all they have in their reserve. But they don't have to report accurately. They don't have to report at all. But I watched all these freaking shows, a lot of them on the social networks telling me, and with China reporting 1,980, and I'm like, and they say it as if that's what they have. And I'm like, that makes no sense. There's no way that country has 1,980 tons. And so I start looking into it, and then I start finding some information about how they never report it and how shady it is and how many other markets they could be buying gold from, and the fact that they're selling off dollars, not in immense amounts, but in significant amounts that are at least on the radar. And all of this is going on at the same time. And then I thought to myself, well, who's the number one miner of gold? And lo and behold, when you go and look it up, you find that it's China. And I'm like, none of that is getting reported. None of it. So in the end, like, the only thing we know about China is that they have way freaking more gold than they say they do. The US, on the other hand, is not buying up gold, and we claim to have just over 8,000, between 8 and 9,000 tons, and most people don't even believe that we have that. Right? There's all like, the Fed will not show anyone our gold reserve. So, in the end, we may not even have that. So, like, what if they turn around? What if China? This is what the gist of the video was. What if China just turns around in a year or two and says, you know what, we're going to dump U.S. currency altogether. We're going to sell all of our shares in U.S. currency, which no one believes they will do because it will hurt them. But what if at the same time they turn around and go, oh, by the way, we misreported the gold just a bit. We've got 15,000 tons, twice as much as the U.S., or 20,000 tons. Like, they just come out with some crazy number and then validate it. What happens then? Right? We're crushed. Right? We take we take a beating on the world stage, and more countries want to be associated with China. Like, that's a real risk and something people should really be legitimately scared of and paying attention to. Not, I don't know when that happens. I'm not saying it's going to happen next week. I'm saying that you should protect your assets and have assets, right? Have assets. That's definitely, it doesn't have to be buying gold, but just have assets. So, like, because that matters. So here's a comment. So Philip from Facebook is saying that they found it in the modified RNA one, and the modified RNA one, and there's 40 billion nanobots in one jab. All right. I mean, I honestly, I don't know. I haven't heard that, so it's possible. One person can't know everything. So, like, I try to source stuff, but, like, I'll look into that, though. If you could send the channel a message on that, I would appreciate it. I want to, because I don't want to forget to look that up, but, like, I definitely want to It looks like all the comments are coming out of Facebook today. So I would like a helicopter ride around the state arresting despotic politicians and government officials. That would be very cool. Yeah, that would be very cool. In the end, right? We got to band together, folks. Right? We got to band together. We got to make it work. We got to get this convention going. It literally, think about it. Keep listening to me. And if you're blowing me off, just keep listening, because eventually you're going to see that there's no other way. That it's it. That's it. Like, even if we want to believe the dootaroos that act like the delegates get these magical powers once they're selected and are gonna, draft a whole new constitution and then ratify it themselves and then start running the country from there. Like, even if we wanted to go there, it's like, at this point, if we don't go there, it's all lost anyway. May as well give them the keys anyway. Like that's how bad it's gotten. And now that they've outlined the plan they have for us, like, publicly, and are like telling you, and we know that plan is completely unacceptable, we're either going to change it legally or we're going to hand them the keys to the house. Like, if we've gotten to a point where we can't trust each other anymore, where we the people we can't trust ourselves with our own power, which is basically the argument that they're telling us. If we're at that point, it's over already. Like, what are we even doing? Turn the lights out. It'd be a wrap. It'd be a wrap. All right, so I've seen the slides from the labs. Nanoparticles are real. There's a question mark there. I don't know if that was an accident or so. I'm not sure about the vax, but yeah. Look, I ain't saying anything's true or not true. I'm just saying I feel like someone in my realm of sources would have seen that, like, would have said something about that. Yeah, Denny, many of the central banks purchased. So the central banks last year, if people are not aware, have purchased more gold than in the history of the country, of the United States, since we went on the gold standard. So in that 55 years, okay, since the last purchase of gold of the levels that went on last year had taken place. If you think that these central banks are not hedging their bets right now, you're crazy, because they are. And they're not going to send you an email to let you know, put you in on the loop. Okay? China just happened to be the most aggressive, by far the most aggressive. Russia was fairly aggressive, but China was making news when people didn't even know it was China. They just knew that there was a central bank buying up gold that wasn't reporting, and they were calling it the mystery. You'll find articles on it. Pull up mystery gold purchase or mystery gold investor. You'll see. And they went through the whole third quarter that way until China finally came clean and said, yeah, it was us. Which, again, is strategic, because they don't have to come clean. They don't have to publicize what they're purchasing and what they're not purchasing. And frankly, the markets that are reported are not the only places that they can purchase gold. So trust me when I tell you, China's hoarding gold right now. Now, they're never going to be on a gold standard. I listen to some of these international folks. Oh, the BRICS countries are going to be on the gold standard. They're not going to be on they're not now, and they're not going to be. They're going to be on digital yuan. That's what they're going to be. And those digits are not, the CCP is not giving up the ability to manipulate that currency to a gold standard. Like, that's silly. That's crazy talk. That's crazy talk. So just understand that when you sign on with BRICS, it's all well and good if you want to celebrate that the U.S. won't be sanctioning people anymore. But if you think China's not going to sanction people, you're crazy. Crazy. Be careful, the devil. Beware the devil you know compared to the devil you don't, right? Because this is, what if China calls America's debt? Default will happen. Well, it won't be complete default. No, I mean, it'll hurt like hell, though. You'll feel it. It'll make this inflation look like a walk in the park. All right. Now, if they drop the dollar and turn around and make a claim that they have an absurd amount of gold in the reserves, and Saudi Arabia says, you know what, we're accepting yuan from now on, that's a problem. That's a problem. But in the end, here's the thing, what I was talking about with the relationship, and I'm getting over the hour here, but I'm going to I'll finish this point, I guess, and see where it goes. But where this is where I was getting with how the relationship between China and the WEF, and like who's in cahoots with who and what's going. I think the reality of what's going on right now is that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of thing. And if if the WEF is looking to take down the US dollar, which they are because they want to replace it with CBDC of their own, central bank digital currency, then it's easy for them to play nice. Like China would turn around and be like, well, we'll accommodate you there. Right? We'll help you out with that. You want to make sure you get like, okay, so for now, WEF, you're our friend because we both agree the US dollar needs to get taken down. And so China prepares for it. And really, what China, Russia, etc., are doing with the gold purchases on the immediate sense is that they're protecting themselves. They're making themselves sanction proof. They're protecting themselves from the United States and our ridiculous and abused power to sanction other nations and mess with other nations' finances because we don't like the decisions that they're making. And so when we do that, even nations that aren't sanctioned stop and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not comfortable with you guys having this kind of power. And we do it all the time. It's not like Russia was the first one. We've been doing it for decades. And the world is looking at it like, dude, if there's an opportunity for us to take that power away from the United States, we're going to take it. And if that means that we can start, buying as much gold as we can, wait it out, whatever year it comes where we think we've got enough, and the U.S. steps out of line once again, we'll then be in a position to make a move like that. And the only thing that can stop this from happening is the United States taking back control of its own currency. And doesn't mean you go on a gold standard. There's not enough gold for that. But what we can do is start to be fiscally responsible, and the value of the dollar will naturally rise. And so, and this comes back to convention of states, right? If fiscal restraints are passed, if we do have a balanced budget amendment, if there are serious penalties for congressmen who blow the budget, right? If those things come into play, immediately, just off the futures market, the dollar starts to go up. Just off the futures market. But then you look at things like the government overreach amendments, and you're shutting down the Department of Education. You're shutting down all these federal agencies that never should be allowed, that are never, their powers were never defined in the 10th Amendment. Those or anywhere in the Constitution, and are clearly not powers based on the 10th Amendment. All those organizations close, and all of those trillions of dollars that we're wasting come back. Okay, and now once that sort of path starts to happen, like the day that the debt clock stops and actually goes back a number, even if it's just 1/100,000th of a number, if it stops and goes backward, the market will go nuts on the dollar. And then we won't be worried about half of this. But none of that happens unless we make it happen. There is no Superman. There's nobody you can elect. Trump can't make that happen. DeSantis can't make that happen. Nobody can make that happen except for us. The government is structurally broken. And once it's fixed, then we can start focusing on the importance of elections again. But until then, we can elect whoever the hell we want. They're going to get eaten by the machine like they always do. And it's going to get us nowhere. And we're going to get right back on our freaking hamster wheel and wonder why doing the same thing over and over and over again is not yielding a different result. That's where we end up getting left. And it's, in the end, in the end, we have to do this. You've got these organizations. The biggest hurdle, honestly, that I've seen out there is this John Birch Society, who pose as, it's a cult, really, is what it is. But they pose as this conservative organization who's conservative on all these points, and we're all about the Constitution. And people who honestly just want to learn more get sucked in. Why wouldn't you? And then all of a sudden they shit the most important thing, the most important piece of the Constitution relevant to today's situation. Despite having tried to call a convention themselves in their history, now they're turning around. They were trying to pass liberty amendments years ago. Now that it's so important and we're at a crucial time, they're against it. and they've been against it for years now. And they preach it to conservatives from a conservative perspective as if somehow and they're lying and using tactics, and they go to legislators, state legislators who don't know any better, and they give them a ton of fake history information and scenarios that will never happen and scare the bejesus out of them, which makes the mountain that much harder to climb. South Carolina could have passed 4 years ago, but they went last year because we had to overcome all that BS. And the reps said as much. The reps said as much. And as a matter of fact, you can even, I don't even know if I can find it. I have a clip of the reps actually saying that. Actually saying that they, they were like, I was against this before I was for it. and they said it in the context of saying, I was convinced that this wasn't the way, but then I read more. And then when I read more, I learned. And I realized that the founders were right, that the founders absolutely nailed this. Justice Scalia, they did a whole video trying to say Scalia was not a fan of the Convention of States. I did a whole video breaking theirs down as to the tactics that they're using and the misleading and the reverse psychology, the crazy stuff that they're doing, and just exposing that they're using tactics that normally you would see from a Soros organization or like one of these, Media Matters or whatever. But they act like they're a conservative organization. And so for those, especially those who are older, they buy that stuff. And they think the whole country's going to go to, we're going to rewrite the whole Constitution. They got these people believing that the founders were outside their jurisdiction in writing our Constitution, that it was outside the commissions that they were sent, which was nonsense. And there's actually a channel, All Things Article 5, Kenneth Quinn, who I actually had on the show once, who does nothing but destroy JBS on his channel and collect this $10,000 award that will never be paid out from Robert Brown over there, who claims that friggin' no founder no founder believed. He keeps changing it. I don't know what his claim is now, but the gist of it was they were trying to make people believe that the founders understood that they were outside of their convention. They were outside of their commission, and they were not. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of examples that the founders absolutely thought they were within what they were asked to do, did what they were asked to do, and the states ratified what they asked for. And that's just real talk. Let me see. The fraction department should be written off. I don't know what the fraction department is. I don't know if there's some slang there on a joke that I didn't that maybe I didn't get. But hey, do me a favor, folks. Check out the Rumble channel. If you're not there already, if you are watching on Rumble, please leave a comment in the live chat. I'm going to end up reaching out to Rumble, because I see comments go in there after the broadcast is done, and I'm like, that's useless to me. Why would you not allow them to post right away? And then why would you allow them to do live chat comments when the show is no longer live? It's just crazy. It's just crazy talk. But Rumble's got work to do with their platform in general, but they do allow free speech, and for that, I like them, and I will start to, I may just start to do some videos exclusively for Rumble, and do them in a way where I take full advantage, like do topics that take full advantage of, not worrying about somebody misreading what I'm saying and interpreting it in some creative way to strike me. Like I'm over it. I'm over it. It's work to do this stuff. And for me to do the research and put together a video and have some 21-year-old schmuck on his sofa, working remotely for Google, whack me because he just wants to, or doesn't like, changes or has a different opinion. It just drives me nuts. So for that, I have no patience. Chinese governments have laws on the books already that if you talk bad about them, the government, they put you. Yeah, they have social points now. They've got the social credit system. If you're not aware of that, have fun with that one. Get ready, bricks, folks, because that's what's coming your way. All right. And frankly, we're not far off. Right. We got this to do. So we're going to do it. I'll show you the clip of them telling you what they're working on. So the BRICS countries eventually are all going to be under this social point system. They all think they're in, like, they're all celebrating like, oh, we're going to beat America, haha. And wait, just wait for those that are celebrating that, because like the fact that they don't understand what China is baffling to me. They're like mesmerized by our evil, but they have no idea what's going on there. Listen to what they're developing though over at the WEF.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's, where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Just in case you're wondering, I wonder what these guys are working on. Like, there you have it. There you have it. That's what they're working on. So, look, you can't, and if, again, what makes it creepy is when you listen to the context that when they say something creepy, they don't say it, in a way that's like shameful. They say it in a way like, stay tuned, folks. We're working on it. Like that's going to be, you're going to get, like, the way that they're planning it, the way they were planning to implement China's social point system is that it's going to be a carbon point system. So in other words, if you were to go, let's say you take a flight on a family vacation, you're going to burn X amount of points. You drive really far to work, you burn an X amount of points. You go to the store too much, you do, whatever, your lawnmower, whatever it may be. It's all going to be smart stuff. It's all going to read back, and then it's all going to detract points. And once you have no more points left for the month or whatever, however they set it, at that point, you may not be able, because they'll have the CBC, which will be programmable, your currency. So they can block you from being able to buy plane tickets again. You can't fly anywhere. You may not be able to get gas, they'll increase the price of gas to make it less desirable, or whatever it may be. But they will mess with you. They will mess with you. The BRICS countries are going to get China's social point system. We're going to have the luxury of having this carbon BS. But trust me when I tell you, that's what they want to happen. That's how important a convention of states is. All right, folks. So other than that, I'm already over the hour, and I am flying solo, and it does take it out of you. But I do appreciate, everybody that's been commenting. Larry, who did we have here? We had Larry, we had Danny, Patrick, I believe, right? Oh, Philip. So, I appreciate you guys jumping in, having the conversation with me. I didn't have anybody on today with me, so I kind of need you guys on days like that where it's just going to be me solo. If I talk to myself too long, it can start to get creepy. All right, folks, until next time, make sure you go check out the video I dropped today on that doctor. I'll see.
And like that.